All right. I'm excited to welcome Dr. Chad Johnson onto the show. Chad, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Michael. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for coming on. Before we dive in, real quick, what's
Yeah.
something about your journey that people are always surprised to learn?
Okay. Wow. So, what is it? Something surprise? How about this? I started taking CE about 2 months out of school for dental implants, and this was in 2005. And so, this was kind of an early adopter of sorts of placing dental implants, and especially for being, 2 or 3 months out of school and then, placing implants with little hands-on training in dental school. I suppose that would be it. So now 20
Interesting.
years in on doing that, it's kind of my thing. So
What was your mindset back then? You forethought, you decided, hey, this is what I want to hone in on, or was it just like, hey, I want to do it?
I liked the oral surgery aspect, and I think I was drawn to it for its profitability and for its long-term success and like tooth replacement options for it. So, for patient outcomes and everything like that. So all of it. Some people are kind of grossed out by the surgical, grossness of slicing a ridge open and putting an implant into bone and stuff, even though they're dentists, and then other people are kind of are drawn to it. And I was drawn to it. I took kind of a beginner's class to be like, oh, that kind of sounds interesting. And I was like, this is really cool stuff. I think I could see myself doing this.
Yeah. Interesting. So has that changed the reasons why for profitability and then the way
No,
it is?
no, I don't think so. I think it is a profitable thing to do. I think that's why there's so much marketing to it for clinicians. I feel like that's why there's so much marketing to it for patients. So profitability is definitely a good thing because you're providing a huge outcome and care for the patient's sake too. So if it's like, well, shouldn't it be cheaper? It's just like, no, that's what it's worth. And if you don't want to do it, then leave yourself a hole. But if it's important enough to you, you need to replace that tooth. And if you have a healthy amount of bone to be able to place an implant, it's better than doing a bridge. And these days, I feel like the bridge is almost as costly as doing a dental implant. You should just get the implant if you're a candidate.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the same for new grads today to, not jump in and be doing it without proper education, but with proper, education and confidence, clinical acumen to do it. Heck yeah.
And so when you were a new grad, you also decided to do something else, right? Like your startup?
I did. So I started my clinic right out of dental school. In fact, I was in dental school when I decided to not associate, but to start my own. And this was back when it was easier to get money too. So I think I was a junior in dental school and I went to
Hmm.
the bank across the street from where I wanted to open in my hometown in Little, Iowa. And I said, hey, I'd like to open my office, here when I graduate. And even without a degree, they were like, I like you. You've gone over your small business administration plan. You've got everything worked out. It looks like you're into the details and you've got an entrepreneurial mindset. So I had asked for $426,000. He said, sure, sounds good. Let's do that. And then I'll give you a couple $100,000 of working capital too, and a line of credit. And so on a handshake, I left and went back and signed papers close to graduating. So I didn't even have my dental degree. But when I graduated, my place was almost done. They were laying the carpet.
Hmm.
And then over the next month, I worked on my stuff. And at that time, it wasn't as internet savvy as it is today. And so it took about a month to get my license. And so about 5 weeks of sitting around, getting stuff organized. And then I opened on the 5th of July in 2005, 20 years ago.
Man. So that's always been the goal, owning a practice?
No, I was open to associating with some dentists across town. But when it came down to it, I also kind of always wanted to open up or practice in my hometown. And the only way that really was going to work is opening my own. And I was game for it because, again, I don't think everyone has it, but like, I kind of have an entrepreneur's mindset. And so I was
Hmm.
game to give it a go.
Okay. So that's 20
Yeah.
years ago. Lots have changed.
I think since the 08, 09 market crash is when banks were a lot tighter. And so we ended up hitting that sweet spot where afterwards, either the interest rate was too high or there were too many hoops to jump through that a lot of people have had a tough time, let's say the last 15 years, in probably even more since COVID, in starting a practice. So it's not apples to apples if someone said, well, why don't I just follow what you did? I think you could follow what I did, but you might meet more resistance from the bank giving out easy money and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah.
So then, right now, quick snapshot. What kind of practice are you running
Uh-huh.
today, and what makes it different in how it operates or serves patients?
Yep. I'm a general dentist and I do regular fillings and stuff just like most general dentists do. I also do CEREC dentistry, so same day crowns, same day onlays, sometimes same day veneers. I am in the Academy of Laser Dentistry, ALD, and so I've been doing lasers for I don't know about 13 years or so. And I'm also part of the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, and I have my diplomate in the International Dental Implant Association that Arun Garg runs out of Miami. And so I like pulling wisdom teeth. I like placing implants. I do removable, dentures and partials. I do Botox for aesthetics. I do Botox for TMD, like joint pain issues.
Mhm.
That's pretty much a summary. I'm a CEREC dentist, implants, pull teeth, dentures, fillings,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Looking at where your practice is right now, with all that in mind that you mentioned, what key
Mhm.
decisions helped shape its current identity or business model right now?
Well, over 20 years, my goodness, that could write a book. I'll tell you what's had more like looking back now, cutting through baloney and just getting to it.
Hmm.
Doing EOS, so the Entrepreneurial Operating System,
Hmm.
EOS is the book by Gino Wickman called Traction. That made a huge difference. And if you're listening to this and you're not even into dentistry, EOS is a great model for management systems. So about 5 years ago, I was thinking about getting my MBA, and I was talking with Victoria Peterson, who is the co-founder of Productive Dentist Academy. And she said, what do you want to do with that? And I said, I wish I could hire someone that like would be an MBA to run my business to make the best decisions as though it was a big business. Like how would you run it well? And she said, okay, so what would they learn? And I said, I don't know. So I've looked it up and here's the books that they would do. And it seems like, I could take these classes remotely and asynchronously, and I could learn the MBA stuff. And here's the books and basically just the management systems, like evaluating the process and finding the weak link within that process and figuring out, okay, how do we solve that problem? So that way the patient experience is super smooth, the team is satisfied, and the owner is satisfied, and the stockholders, which also is me,
Hmm.
that we're satisfied and looking at it like a business. And so I found EOS, and because Victoria said, well, then just DIY it, just do it yourself. And I found EOS and we started implementing that. There was a dentist across town who was running it, and she's very generous and, offered more information about it and a contact info to a guy that could help me run it. And so he started helping us implement it. And I was reading the books and got my team on board for ownership of understanding it. EOS is probably a big one. And my second out of the two is Profit First. So setting up your accounting system so that way profitability is the major factor in your decision making to having a profitable business rather than a hobby. Because
Hmm.
you've sometimes heard it said before, if you're not profitable in your business, then you just have a hobby.
Yeah. Interesting. Talk to me about the DIY on the EOS. Like, well, rewind a little bit. Before that, did you ever get the MBA or no?
I did not. Nope. And I don't plan to. Like, at least for now, I really don't see much reason to because I think I achieved what I wanted to. And my concern was, like, would I leave the practice and do this, or would I stay in the practice and basically not be around my family while I worked a bunch of evenings doing homework and stuff like that? So,
Hmm.
no, I did not finish the MBA.
When Victoria told you that, why don't you just DIY it? What are the process to that?
Of DIY, real tangible. Read the book and follow their steps. If you strictly wanted to DIY it, I think the DIY comes in two factors: a DIY of the MBA, and wow, these letters are starting to like the DIY of the EOS. So if you're doing it yourself for an MBA, a master's in your business administration, it would be simply just reading the books and trying to perform the outcomes. I did happen to read, and whether it's true or not certainly is debatable. Okay. I
Hmm.
mean, so whatever. It was an internet read. And it said, that after 10 years of being a business owner is going to have the expertise of an MBA level, at least entry level, that you've lived it. So it would be like if someone lived on their own for 10 years, it's just an analogy of sorts. It's no put down, but if you
Yeah.
lived on your own and then you decided to take a home ec class and they talked to you about how to go to the grocery store and how to cut up vegetables and how to sew something, it's just like after 10 years of being on your own, you don't know it all, but you probably can figure it out. You're just like, I know how to do that. I know how to change the water filter on my refrigerator, right? And if I don't, I can Google it. That's what I'm talking about with DIYing the MBA in general. DIYing EOS for me. So EOS being an operating system that produces results like an MBA would get is simply reading the books and then implementing the chapters. So what the listeners or viewers will see on the screen is eosworldwide.com. So this is their website. I'm not paid by them. I'm a big fan of theirs and trying to figure life out. And there are 6 questions that you're trying to answer about your business. Number 1, what's your vision? And then number 2, what is the data that's going to surround that vision? What are the processes that you're going to make happen so that way everyone's on the same page? Getting traction by having a meeting pulse. And it's basically like a certain amount of meetings per week and month and quarter and annual and stuff like that to be able to get the results that you need. And rocks are basically big goals that each team member is going to take. And then you as a team might have a rock and stuff like that. So it's kind of that idea of rock, pebbles, sand fitting into a jar, and you fit the rocks first and stuff like that. So the big things. Issues, coming up with an issue list. And if you have a meeting pulse that we just meet once a week. And so like if someone's like, hey, could we have a meeting? It's like, no, we have our meeting on Monday. It can wait until then. And if not, fine. But the nice thing about it, they all know that we have our leadership meeting on Mondays, Monday afternoons. And that's going to be the time that we discuss the stuff. So it's not like on Thursday, they're like, hey, we need to really talk about this. No, put it down for the Monday meeting, and we'll talk about it then. And then we talk about the issues and we identify, discuss, and solve those. So the IDS, we're going to identify the problems, discuss all of it, and then come up with a solution. And then the right people, right seats. That's another popular. Gino Wickman, Traction is the book. And then Rocket Fuel is the follow-up book. Read both of those and get an idea that in the business, you are the business owner. And then having a person help you implement this is going to be very beneficial. I don't want to say critical, but critical. And so those are the 6 things that we're trying to accomplish with EOS. And once you start getting those into place, everything flows in your business a lot better.
When it comes to this, Chad, where did you find, besides people, because I feel like that would be like basically number 1 almost sometimes.
Sure.
Where did you find like the problem area to implement, or where you're like, man, this is a hassle coming up with this?
No, everyone's would be different. All of these steps are their own works in progress. I'll admit something that probably a lot of people would already know in their own heart. The right people in the right seats is always going to be a challenge for a small business. I don't know if it is a challenge for a big business. I can't speak to that. It might be, but for a small business, if you have 5 people or 15 people, there's someone there that's stirring the turd. And do you even know? Have you identified who that is? And what are you going to fire them? Are they your neighbor? Do they go to church with you? I mean, like, are you hosed if you fire them? Is it a small town? So that can be tough. The leadership skills around finding out, is the person the right person, but not in the right seat? So that takes some gut check fortitude, man, because sometimes it's really tough when it might be your wife that is your office manager and she's the problem. I mean,
Yeah.
so if you can imagine, that would suck.
Interesting that you mentioned that. When you also talked about the data surrounding the vision.
Yep.
So that means you have to have a crystal clear vision.
That's the starting point.
Have you ever seen it where it's like, this is the vision, 2 years down the road, you're like, that's not my vision anymore?
Yep. So looking on the screen right now, I brought up my Google Sheet and I'm a Google fanatic. So Google Sheets, Google Calendar and Gmail are all my sphere that I work from. So this might not work for everyone. Whenever we have our meetings, we actually will go through this and I'll say, what is EOS? And it's a set of simple concepts and practical tools that have helped thousands of entrepreneurs around the world get what they want from their businesses. Implementing EOS will help you and your leadership team get better at three things: vision, traction, and the healthiness of your business. And so when we talk about the vision, and there are these 8 questions. What are your core values? And we did this as a team. So this was on, I want to say, an all-day project. Some of this is going to be owner-led, and some of these are going to be team-led. You can make as much of it owner-led or team-led as you want. So everyone's going to do this differently. But what are your core values? What is your core focus? What is your 10-year target? What is your marketing strategy? Then what's your 3-year picture? What's your 1-year plan? What are your quarterly rocks? You get 13 weeks to achieve your rock. And then what are your issues that you're addressing? Those are the 8 questions that we're trying to manage, okay? Let's break this down too. There's a 10, 3, and 1-year plan. And they call it the 10-year target, the 3-year picture, and the 1-year plan. But I could just call it your 10-year plan, your 3-year plan, and your 1-year plan. You then start by saying, in 10 years, where do you want to be? And then back it up. In order to get to that in 10 years, in 3 years, where would you have to be? And in 3 years, if that's where you have to be, in 1 year, where are you going to have to be in order to hit the 3-year plan, in order to hit the 10-year plan, okay? So when we go down here, we identified our core values as, funny enough, it's spelled core. We're A, attentive, C, compassionate, O, optimistic, R, reliable, and E, efficient. Those were ours. We came up with those on our own. And then from there, we had the core focus, which is question number 2 of the 8 questions. It's split into 2 things: purpose, cause, and passion, which we identify for Veranda Dentistry, empowering our patients to optimal oral health. The niche, or as EOS people say, and it drives me nuts, but they say the niche, and I just go, fine. But the niche is that we slay disease. That's one of our sayings. It's just kind of like Nike, just do it. It's a short little quip. We slay disease. That's what we're up to. And then you can go through, and every year I reassess what is your 10-year target. Because if you're like, wait a second, I as the owner don't want to do what I did 10 years ago. 10 years ago, my goals are actually different than they are now. I wanted to build a huge 18 operatory PPO office. And now I haven't built that. I sold the ground where it was going. I'm thinking about building somewhere else, maybe in the next 5 years. And I'm wanting to build like a 6-op kind of place. I mean, so it's totally changed. I'm now fee for service. I don't do PPO since COVID hit. So I reassess that 10-year target and then back up. So questions number 3, 5, and 6 are the 10-year, the 3-year, and the 1-year plans. I do those on my own. The team can have input. I'm glad to hear them out. And then we identified as the team question number 1, what are the core values? And question number 2, what is the core focus, which is twofold. Number 1, our purpose, which is empowering our patients to optimal oral health. And our niche, we slay disease. We then came up with a code of ethics. And so we built, and I have an in-house marketing guy, so this looks all branded nice and stuff like that. Yeah. And we put this on the screensavers at the feet of patients so they can see this in the reception area, that we are attentive, compassionate, optimistic, reliable, and efficient. That is what our core values are for us. And we didn't mean to do that. It's just crazy that it ended up being A, and then the word core. And so we wrote down examples. So as the whole team, not just the leadership team, the whole team, we said, okay, what exactly is attentive? And so we listed some, and we had a whole sheet of paper over lunch and just listed out all the things that attentive would mean. Then we put stars next to the one that we thought were the best. And the top 4, you can read them right here if you can see small enough. And so those were what we came up with. And we then evaluate our employees based on this. Give me an example of when you were attentive by actively listening. And these are what we evaluate the employees on. If we were to do a patient questionnaire, we'd want patients to know that we're trying to be these core values, and how did we do on those? This is in essence what we hire and fire off of. And then we set up our marketing strategy down here. And then we came up with a scorecard of stuff that we're looking at trying to accomplish. And I made it into this scorecard
Oh,
where we
wow.
have this right here. And every week we look at these numbers and then we figure out were we on track or off track for hitting those goals. And we go back each year and look at those and stuff like that. But the idea to this one was what 5 things, if someone handed you a note card, if you were on the beach to see if your business was doing well, what things would you want to know? And so these were the ones I wanted to see. And after a while, I think we've done other ones and we're like, I don't know if that's important. So we reevaluate those. But this gets back to your original question of do you reassess those? So I'm circling all the way back. Yes, I reevaluate those, but at the same time, the same core focus has not changed in 5 years. And when we market actually based on this stuff right here. And there are 3 uniques that we have under our marketing strategy that were high tech, exceptional patient care, and obsessively clean. And
Mm.
so when we do our radio ads, we'll say, we're a high tech office with exceptional patient care and we're obsessively clean. We slay disease. At Veranda Dentistry, we're empowering our patients to optimal oral health. And we're putting all that branding terms into the radio ads, into our website when people are looking at that. Lastly, you'll notice those 6 things of EOS. One of them is the meetings, so like the pulse. And so when we're talking about the pulse, this is kind of a breakdown of what that meeting would look like. This is very granular, so I hope that people want to see details like this, but this is huge difference on my business is running it this way rather than how do we feel about stuff or whatever. So
Mhm.
we have 5 minutes on give me a personal best and a business best of this last week. And everyone in the leadership team goes around that. There's 5 of us. We go around there and then we look at the scorecard for, the last week. How did we hit on those 8 things? We do a rock review. If we're on track or off track, that's it. Yeah, I read the rock and I say, Dean, your job was to do this. Are you on track or off track? I'm on track. Okay. And if there's any customer or employee headlines, we look at those. We have a to-do list as far as like stuff that needs to get done. Like we need to oil the door on the going out the back because it's squeaking or whatever. And
Mhm.
then we have the issues list. Okay. Is Samantha, I'm making the name up, doing her job like we were hoping to? Do we need to discuss it? Or is the person that's in charge of that on track with making sure that she's doing what she should? And then we conclude, like how did we do on our meeting? And then we rank it. And that should take somewhere around 90-ish minutes or so to accomplish. Of course, you can get done sooner, you can take longer, but after a couple months of that, it actually goes pretty quick.
Wow. This is incredible, by the way, like the
Good.
detail behind it and everything. But the scorecard, when it comes to that, I noticed you had green, yellow, and red.
Yep.
The green obviously is good, right? I would
Yep.
assume.
Green is good, red is bad, and the yellow was like we're kind of given a attaboy for being pretty close.
Okay.
So subjectively, if something's like 10-ish% almost there, like it's just 10% off, but it doesn't get a full green because it didn't hit the goal. But at the same time, it's like, oh, that was close. So we'll put in yellow.
So, for example, February 10th and 27th, it's
Yep.
red and yellow, right?
Yep.
What do we do in that situation?
When it's sucking, yeah,
When
let's
it's
call it like it
second.
is. I've had like a sucky last year. Then what we would do is we would go and put that on the issues. So why is our net production not where it needs to be? Are we not marketing like we should? And we'll put up a sticky sheet of paper or whiteboard or whatever, and we'll throw up ideas. What controls our net production? And then if that's the case, what can we control to make that change?
Mm.
And those are generalities of like examples because every week we might say it's the same thing as last week. Or, you know what, like after a half a year, we might go, well, have we tried re engaging with the limited exams and getting those patients back in the door? So, all that stuff. I feel like our economy has hit us heavier. Number one, in the Midwest, it seems like I'm noticing it more than some people on the coast. I don't know if because here there's a mindset of not necessarily utilizing debt, but I hear other
Mhm.
people say, no, we're rolling. And then number two, if you're a PPO office and you're heavily insurance based, then I feel like you're still rolling quite a bit. But for the few offices that are fee for service and do not participate in contracting with dental insurances, that people are more mindful of their dollars right now when they're getting treatment plans done. And so I think being a fee for service office is hitting us heavier. So in other words, when times are good, we're going to do awesome. And then when times are bad, we're going to feel it more than the PPO offices that are bread and butter, that are just staying level on the lows and level on the highs.
Okay, got you. So then if we look at 2024, January
Yep.
29th, right? How do you not, or do you do this? Like you're having your team meeting and you're like, okay, guys, what did we do here, January 29th? Or do you already do that? And then it's just like,
Yep.
hey, we've done that. Nothing's new kind of a thing.
So forensically, like looking back and going, wait a second, what was going on there? So for example, this month of the previous year, it might have been the month that we had a special going on that kind of exhausted a lot of people that had treatment plans that were delayed. So my brother's a realtor, and he says when people are not fixing up their home like they should, it's called deferred maintenance. Even though you should replace the roof, you haven't replaced the roof. But then when you go to sell the home, the next person's going, man, that roof is going to need replaced. So I'm going to have to factor that cost in. So you thought you were saving money, but the fact is now it's going to bite you in the butt. So sometimes people have treatment plans, and we have a list of 200 people that need dental implants. And we'll call and say to those 200, hey, why don't you come in and get it done? We're getting a special training with my associate at the time. And so we'd like to offer, 1,000 off or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people come in, and that depletes pretty quickly, for those that say yes. And so it's not like you can just continue to do that indefinitely. You could offer it another round for the people who didn't say yes. But at the same time, at some point, if you get done with 200 people and you had 200 people on the list, you're done,
Yeah.
or it might even be a third of the people, because not everyone can say yes just because you're offering a discount. So yes, forensically looking back and figuring out what you're doing right is a huge difference. When, for example, 2025,
Mm-hmm.
when we're in red on the accounts receivable ratio, and then we're working it down to yellow, and then we see it go back up to red. And as we extend out, we started getting it back into the green zone. And so, we do put our time into figuring out how do we go about doing that. And that would be under the issues list.
So will anyone ever see if they copied and pasted this and did it in their own practice, all green all the time?
If so, then they have to answer two questions. Are you content with where you are? Because this is a life decision. If you're content, you're going to solve a lot of problems. Business is done based off of discontentment, and business sells on discontentment. And in fact, jokingly, I'm willing to offer consulting for a certain fee for anyone who's discontent with their business. And for a certain fee, I will help you fix that until you're content with your business, which might be the day that you die or the day that you retire. And even then, you might not be content, and you'll need a life coach to coach you into how to, so it never seems to end. So if you're content, you're done. I mean, like green, then cool. But the next question is, if you're not content, do you want to push into the business to change it 10%? So in other words, all greens and for the whole year straight, you need to ask yourself, is your production goal, as my example, where you want it to be? Or have expenses gone up and you need to reassess that? Do people want raises? And so you're going to have to reassess that. So these numbers are going to change, and that should affect your greens. Maybe your team, though, is really good at rocking it out, and you bump it up by 5%. And they still just cream it. Does the team want to start implementing an incentive bonus, and you increase it by another 5%, and then they get a profit off of that because you're content with how you're getting paid? Contentment is going to be question number one. Are you content with your take-home pay and your workload? Because you could double the workload if you're cool with doubling your workload and the stress. But what happens if you're just like, man, I'm stressed out all the time, and what I would give to just do half a day? Then it's like, okay, well then reassess your goals. And you would do that based off of your vision.
Interesting. Real quick, super side. How many days are you open during the month?
I'm thinking 16-ish is what I'm currently doing. There are some days in the last half year that I've done some Fridays and even Saturdays. So that makes an exception to the rule. But typically I would say 16, maybe 15. I just do 4-day work weeks. So Monday through Thursday.
Okay, gotcha.
By and large, but
Yeah.
I take days off, and that would lower the number, but something like that.
Gotcha. So these are like by week. So then did that happen with you, Chad, in the sense of the contentment, and then you had to change it because your 10-year goal changed?
Yeah. I'm not there yet. I'm learning to be more content. So I don't want to say that I'm flat out discontent, but I'm learning to be more content, but I'm not there yet. I've got bank bills. So I had an office. I started in 2005. By 2020, I was looking at replicating my business model. And so I bought two practices and then COVID hit.
Mm.
And so I now have three offices and all three are closed because, I mean, every state was different, but Iowa, we were closed for, I think, 9 weeks. And then even when we opened back up, people were concerned about how they could come back into the practice and stuff. So horrible time to buy a practice. I wouldn't recommend ever buying two practices if COVID ever comes back around. So don't do it.
Yeah.
But when I did, I kept the north side office open for about 18 months and then I closed it down. It just wasn't taken off. And I kept the west side one and my original east side one. And so I have two offices now, but I'm still paying on the remodel for the west side practice. I'm actually still paying on some of the equipment for the north side practice. And within the next couple of years, I'll have it paid off. And that will drastically change how I go about from there on forward as far as profitability and my goals.
Hmm.
But right now, I need to make a certain amount to be able to pay the bank bills. In 2019, I had finished paying off all my debts, and that was a great feeling. And I decided whether I wanted to rest on my laurels or double down and see if I couldn't replicate it. And I chose the replicate model and put me back into debt. And I'll be done in about 6 weeks with my first of, I think I have 10 loans in there. And so when I get that paid off, I'll kind of Dave Ramsey roll to
Yeah.
some other stuff and start getting that paid down. So yeah,
Nice, man.
I don't
Nice.
know if that's too much information or whatever,
No,
but yeah.
I love it. I love it. No, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing too, as well. The scorecard and everything like that.
Yeah.
Throughout this time, you mentioned you have an in-house marketing guy and you
Yep.
also have radio ads.
Yep.
Talk to me about your in-house marketing guy. What specifically does he do? And then is radio ads and a website all you do for marketing?
I've done mailers before, and having a tracking number and taking advantage of watching your ROI on stuff is going to be quintessential in you making further decisions. I'll say this, when I first started, I thought that when people would pay money to the marketing gods and hope that the marketing gods would look favorably on them and rain, I didn't like that method. I feel like I'm spending money out and then just hoping that the marketing gods will bless me with my results, right?
Hmm.
And I stopped that because I was just like, this is garbage. When I started marketing again, we started tracking the return on investment, the ROI, by having a tracking number and then figuring out how much production we were getting out of that.
Hmm.
And that helped me make better decisions because when we were getting a 5-to-1 return on investment from radio and it was going to 6-to-1. And then when we were doing postcard mailers and we started with a 3-to-1 return on investment and we were going to a 5-to-1, or for the website traffic, it was a 10-to-1. And then when we had internal marketing that was doing like 95-to-1, because it's so cheap
Yeah.
to internally market. So all that stuff, that helps you make your decisions about marketing by factoring in ROI and tracking that. That's tough to do, but that's what the in-house marketing guy is doing. He's doing our social media. He
Hmm.
is doing our office branding. So our branding looks a little bit more like polished, almost corporate, though it's not, but because he's using the same color palette for most everything. And we've talked over too, like, what is our strategy? What is our avatar of patient that we're trying to pull in? And what's our message to them? And is the message that we're putting out the message that we're wanting to put out? Are we giving any mixed signals? So he goes through social media, make sure that our phone numbers are matching up to stuff, on websites and social media and everything like that, that we're getting reviews. He kind of does some background stuff as far as ordering business cards, ordering appointment cards, and all those are branded the same way too. So it just looks really professionally done. He does a great job with it.
Gosh, how long have you had the marketing guy for in-house?
For about 4 or 5 years. I've known him for 20 years. So
Yeah. No, that's
mhm.
really good. That's really good having someone like that in-house to
It's
do all that.
rare, but yeah, not everyone can do that, but it's really cool having it.
If you were to look at a practice and let them know, hey, you need an in-house marketing guy, what would be the signs of that?
A fee for service office is going to be more the type that needs it because every patient interaction is going to matter. PPO, you're getting people in the seats. Okay.
Mhm.
But when you're doing a fee for service practice, on the other hand, you have a higher skill set, hopefully, and you're wanting to market a certain procedure or a certain aspect of dentistry, a certain culture there. And that culture, that brand needs to be portrayed in your marketing. So are you posting stuff on YouTube and or TikTok and or Instagram and or Facebook? And from what I'm told, they're all nuanced different. And so
Mhm.
you can't treat them all the same as far as the call to action or, the hashtags and all that junk. You would know better than I, but
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. How much budget wise would someone need to allocate for a marketing person like this?
So in Iowa, it would be different than New York City. I can
Mhm.
only imagine. Also, these days, I don't know about outsourcing that to where if you had someone that is foreign located or whether it's expat or whatnot, but like you could find a new grad and maybe hire them for 20 an hour in Iowa, maybe, an upper end for 30 an hour. And
Mhm.
then someone in New York City might hear that and laugh and just be like, holy moly, like mine is double that. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. It's basically another admin, or I would put it at like an assistant for my level as far as pay. Furthermore, you don't necessarily have to hire full time. So keep that in mind. But a PPO office, I think, would be hard pressed because you're getting patients because you're in network and you're getting a write off fee for being in network. And so that's where the marketing dollars are going, is to your write off.
Interesting. So then,
Yeah.
how big is your team, real fast?
I have 9 people. There are 10 of us.
Okay. So when hiring,
Yeah.
what's been your most effective filter for finding people who actually help the practice grow and not just fill a role?
So it goes back to vision. It's really cool. It's almost like my answers start to get boring because it goes back to vision. And we have a mission statement too. And we'll have them read that and say, how do you see yourself fitting into this? And then we say, our core values are this. Give me an example of times. It's almost the same as the employee review, just saying to the new person, how would you fit into this? And I think that's about it. It's actually kind of boring, is just saying, can you get on board with being part of our vision? It might be even like our core focus under the purpose part when we say, at Veranda Dentistry, we are empowering our patients to optimal oral health. How can you help us achieve that, for
Mhm.
example, And it
Gotcha.
would be different for each person's office, but that's the idea. Get your culture and your brand and your vision. And then from there, ask questions. Because if there was some excuse, like, well, ours would be different, then it's just like, well, then figure out what your vision is. Because if you're just like, well, I don't want to ask about that, then it's like, well, then it's not your vision.
Yeah, it's somebody else's that you're kind of copying. Interesting.
Kind of, yeah,
And then one other thing you mentioned was the issues meeting, right? Where you kind of like discuss
correct.
issues. And you mentioned how she doesn't work for your practice or anything. It was a name you made up, Samantha, right?
Yeah,
Samantha,
Samantha, sure.
you did this. Do you call her out in the meeting or do you kind of like
Nope.
pull her to the side or?
If they were part of the leadership team, then yeah, we'd call them out right there. Not in a mean way. I suppose there's a nice way of being like, hey, Samantha, how's this going?
Yeah.
Versus, oh, I'm calling you out, like it's okay corral, like we're going to pull guns on each other, right? It doesn't need to be a shootout, but yeah, I suppose we'd call them out. One of the things with EOS, no sacred cows, like at the meeting, feelings aside, we need to hash stuff out. And I suppose you need to be mindful of feelings, but kind of the idea is we need to be able to have honest conversations. But no, they're not all at that meeting. Stuff would be addressed in private if there are issues. And so, for example, if one of the issues is Samantha just never seems to be finishing her job description correct. Okay, so guess what the office manager's rock is? The next 13 weeks, have 3 meetings with Samantha to follow up about her job descriptions and her understanding of those job descriptions and the accomplishment of those job descriptions. And so at the end of 13 weeks, our office manager would weekly be reporting, is she on track for accomplishing that rock of having 3 meetings in those 13 weeks with that employee?
Yeah.
And if not, like if she's 11 weeks in and she's like, I'm on track. And it's like, well, how many have you done? Zero. It's like, now we start having to ask, okay, maybe you're not on track and you need to tell us you're not on track because then as a team, we can help you get that done. That might mean we go, okay, we're going to handle the front desk stuff while you go and take Samantha to lunch and get that meeting in. And
Mhm.
we'll, as a team, kind of absorb the other work and get it done. Because our goal is actually to try and get done with about 80% of our rocks at any given quarter. Of
Mm.
course, 100% sounds wonderful, but like 80% is good.
Yeah.
If we don't get done with those in 13 weeks, at the end of the 13 weeks, you have 1 to 2 weeks as a to-do list to get done with it. And so it's just like, if you've been delaying, tough luck. Now at this point, it goes on your to-do list and you've got 2 weeks to get it done.
Wow. Has that come to a situation where you've had to tell that to an employee and then they're
Mm-hmm.
like, and they don't get it done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we get to the end of the 13 weeks and it's not done, there's two
Mhm.
things we're assessing. Is it important in the first place? Because maybe we go, I feel like some of that has naturally resolved. For example, Samantha is hired and the office manager has 13 weeks to have 3 meetings. And Samantha, 6 weeks in, quits. Okay. So she's no longer working. Well, then the rock is done. I mean, so that's one where naturally it's going to be over
Yeah.
anyway, right? They naturally selected themselves out. But let's say that's not the case and they're still around. And we go, okay, you've got 2 weeks to meet with them. Let's say Samantha is an assistant. Okay, so office manager, I'm going to block her chair off on Monday and Wednesday and the following Monday. So basically now I step in and I start saying, I'm going to see to it like that you get it done. And so that's kind of how it works is it kind of becomes the king on the chessboard starts strong moves. And I suppose that might be more the queen than anything. So
Yeah. But interesting. So it goes to the
yeah.
high alert, like, hey, we got to make
Yeah.
this happen.
Yep. If you're not going to take him out, I'm going to move the rook and we're going to make it happen.
Gotcha. Okay. So Chad, I know you said 2 practices, right?
I do.
You have a family, you ride. I saw your video.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, snap, you're right.
Yes.
And
Are
then
you a writer?
I just got into it like 2 years ago. 2
Nice.
years ago, yeah. So I have a Scott, and my wife has I think a
Nice.
Trek or something. But all I really do is climb. I live near California, so kicks her butt every time.
I was gonna
But
say that sucks.
yeah,
That's
so
a good workout.
you do that, and you have a podcast. How are you doing?
I have a high capacity for running at more speed than most people. I play hard, I work hard. I'm doing okay. I am not full charging at age 45 as much as I was when I was 35. And yet I do find time to rejuvenate. I make sure I get enough sleep. I'm not as hardcore at working out and whatnot as I was 10 or 20 years ago, but I still try and make sure that I'm healthy. I 80% eat right. I don't want to say I'm like some hardcore, but I make sure nutrition is kind of on point, not like super on point. I'll still have dessert and whatnot, but I try and finish a gallon of water each
Oh,
day
nice.
and stuff like that. So I try and do things that will dietarily put me on point. And I think my biggest stressors is just making sure that I get my debts paid down. Those kind of stress me out, and so I pay those off. And I have a couple years of that left. And once I get done with that, I got a taste of it in 2019. It's just like, oh man, that's nice to be done with that. Because then I'll be able to take that money home. I mean, I'm paying taxes on it right now, so it'd be
Mhm.
pure profit, and that'll be fantastic. So my better days are coming, but I also try and take off time from work in the afternoon to go to the track meet or, to coach basketball for the kids or stuff like that. And, stuff at church too. And so just life balance is there, but I don't seem to mind running at full speed that a lot of people might get burnout. I don't know, at 45, you'd think I'd be burnt out by now, but I just must be type A enough to keep going. Is that kind of what you were getting at
Yeah,
or?
no, it's good. It's
Yeah.
good. I like just told me you do a lot more. And the
You
thing is,
know,
it's like you're not doing it in a way where you're very analytical about it. Like how we saw your
yeah,
practice, scorecards, everything, right? And so,
I live off of Google Calendar. I don't have headspace for when do we need to take the trash out. Honestly, the trash is literally in my Google Calendar on Sunday night and every other week for the recycling. And once a month, I've got my air filter changing on Google Calendar. I don't think about it. When I go to work, I go to work based off of where my Google Calendar tells me to go to work. I go to this podcast because Google told me, an hour early, just, hey, you've got a podcast. And I go, okay. So I only worry about the now. I don't worry about what am I doing? People will at my workout place, What's your schedule look like today? I don't know. I just show up and then I do whatever, so I worry about that then. I worry about
Mhm.
lunch at lunch. What are we having for dinner? I don't know. I'll worry about that when I get home for dinner from the night. So I kind of just take the day as it goes according to Google Calendar, and I have it all kind of synced in there. So I'm dropping a lot of like little hacks, I guess you'd call them, like of stuff that I do. And none of them are like, what? Whoa, you talk to people and tell them they should do a better job. It's like, yeah, that's management. Duh. Or like you use a calendar. But honestly, to me, when I plug in my calendar, I have headspace to just be in the now.
Interesting. Okay. And then you mentioned from 35 to 45. Looking back now, if you were to budget it, especially for those who are listening who are in that age,
Sure.
what would you kind of advice or guidance would you want
Yep.
to give?
So for the family dentist, male or female, the earlier you can get moving on continued education to increase your skills, the better. Even if the kids are young, the younger they are, the better. I know this sounds mean and a psychologist might disagree. It's just my opinion. But like my oldest son is 16. And when he was young, I'd go off to continued ed all the time. And I'd be gone probably one weekend a month and I was gone. Those were tough 2 or 3 days to be gone, for continued ed. But he'd forget it. He doesn't look back going, oh man, I remember that Tuesday when you left and, you were gone for 72 hours. I remember it. So why do I say that? Yes, it's tough. And yes, you're losing that time, but do it the sooner you can, feasibly for your family without putting too much undue stress because it doesn't get easier being gone to continued ed while my son is having his band concert as a sophomore in high school. So I've somewhat slowed down on that and I'm reaping the rewards of the continued ed that like with my AGD fellowship that I got 11 years ago when he was 5. So that was tough getting those 500 hours in and taking the test and being gone to all the continued ed and whatnot. But listen, who wants to take a CE the week before they retire, right? Like go to a COIS course and spend a gajillion dollars on a course in Seattle and take 5 days doing 55 hours of continued ed with the week before you retire, maybe for fun for some people, but like you're not going to be able to get a return on that investment if you're retiring the following week. So do it young and early in your career. So that way you can reap the most reward off of that, have the most return on investment from that. You don't have to do it all at once, but figure out a kind of a 10-year strategy on your CE. Like in the first year, I want to learn implants. In the first 3 years, I want to learn orthodontics. In the first 5 years, I want to work on full arch cases and stuff like that and plan it out mentally and be flexible, but like, don't think, like, okay, the first 10 years, I'll just hang low and then it'll be easy. No, it won't. It's just as tough when your girls are having a dance recital and now you're like, well, I've got to hit my CE, or just be like, I guess I can't hit the CE that I was hoping to. So we do this future self projection, which is smart. Like it's a human trait that we do future self projection. No, I'll pay later because my future self will be in a better position to pay for it than my now self. And this is true with continued ed too. It's not going to be easier. And it could be different for those who are single and never planning on having kids or can't have kids. I'm being respectful to that. I'm just talking to the, majority. If you're having a family or whatnot, it might be smart to continue doing your CE early. So that way, when you're running and gunning, boy, I remember having a midnight flight and then getting up and being at work at 6 the next day. I don't know, doing that at 30 was easier than it should be at age 60. That's all I'm saying. Again, not rocket science, but use that head knowledge to change how your heart is thinking about it and get the CE done.
I love it, Chad. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But
Oh
before we
man.
say goodbye, can you tell
Yeah.
our listeners where they can find you?
I mean, if you're kind of curious about checking out my professional stuff, it's Veranda Dentistry, veranda, like the front porch of a Carolina home, So verandadentistry.com. And then the podcast that I do through Productive Dentist Academy is called Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. It's on all the stuff. My co-host, Reagan Robertson, and then also Maggie Augustin is a dentist in Chicago, friend of mine that we podcast together. We do one a week and we release different stuff. So check that out on productivedentist.com or again on Spotify, all the apps and stuff like that that you use. Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. Thanks for
Nice.
letting me share that, Michael.
No,
Very
of
cool.
course, of course.
Yeah.
That's going to be in the show notes below. So anybody who wants to check it out, definitely reach out to Chad and also check out the podcast. And Chad, thank you for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you
You're a
soon.
great interviewer, buddy. Great job.